Awesome. Thanks. So we've got about an hour or so. I'm going to keep it not very technical. If anybody has any specific questions on technical details as we go through things, I won't have any demos to show you. Okay. Okay. Which button does it? Oh, the top one? Okay. Okay. Awesome. All right, sorry. Just getting set up. So I'm not going to go too deep in the weeds. I don't have any demos to show you. Basically, the goal for today is to offer a little bit of insight and thought leadership in what we at F5 are seeing in the Army today, and some places that we have had some experience that we can maybe offer some guidance on ways that things could have been done a little bit better. So first of all, just to give a little bit of introduction on myself and who I am. I've been supporting the DoD since I was 17. I enlisted my junior year in high school. I've been supporting DoD networks since the 90s. I deployed the network in Gitmo, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Iraq for JTF 160 and 170. So second Gulf War, not the first one. I'm not that old. It's really all I know at this point. Even once I got out of the military, I worked on Quantico as an instructor. I taught Marines how to stand up tactical networks, how to build Exchange servers, how to build Active Directory. At the time, we were still on NT and Lotus Notes and things like that. So I've been around through the evolution of IT in the DoD. You know, we used to be able to have RAS servers that people could dial in when they went TAD with laptops and things like that. Now, for the most part, that's non-existent. We have applications that are published. We may have some locations that have the ability to provide VPN based on a million different STIGs or SRGs or whatever compliances are required to get that set up. I was the director of IT for an organization that developed the vehicle lifecycle management software used around the Army today. So if anybody uses Teams for any sort of vehicle management or maintenance, the company I worked for built that. They were sold off in 2011, which is when I came over to F5. I've been at F5 since 2011. I've covered pretty much every DoD territory that F5 covers. Knowing the Marine Corps, having been a Marine, the Army is still kind of a new beast to me, even though I've been covering for 2 years. Patching it all together is sort of a new thing. I get the IT, just not how all of you guys interact and work together. Technically, you can ask me anything you want, and we can take it offline as deep as you want to get. So my mission today is basically, like I said, to offer some guidance, some oversight, maybe some thought leadership on how to evolve some of the thinking that's used in designing a lot of the architectures and deployments that are going on today. I'll also hit on a few of the task orders that are part of the Army Network campaign plan, as far as accelerating to the edge and adding cybersecurity, single security architecture, and what those sort of things mean. My goal really is overall, not just today, but as an engineer at F5, is to get away from this is just how we've always done it. That's one of the worst things you can say. We are starting, JTF cyber commands that focus on cybersecurity, that reevaluate how things have been done. We look at different ways to do encryption and different TLS stacks and ways that we perform CAC authentication. If anybody didn't notice, the CIO, I don't remember which CIO, Army CIO, DoD CIO, one of the CIOs, there's a lot of speakers at the last show I was at where they said we are moving away from CAC cards. We're going to get rid of smart card authentication in the DoD. We're going to focus on biometrics. About 2 weeks ago, a notice was put out that we are moving away from SMS. We can't do one-time passwords. One-time passwords aren't as secure as we thought. Some of the RSA tokens that we use are not as secure as they were once thought. So really my goal is to get us away from designing architectures in a bubble. Just because we go out and we find the best of breed, industry best practice standard for one piece of hardware, and we go get those pieces of hardware from every vendor, they may not just plug in together. They might, but in some cases you end up with random scenarios like JRSS, where anybody who knows Hari went out and said, give me the best of everything. And then it was up to his team to figure out how to make it work together. This was years ago. How many JRSS stacks are up right now? How many are passing traffic? How many people are happy with it? And they're already trying to absorb more. So that's kind of what we see. Everybody knows. Everybody's trying to get everybody else's money. I want to take your program. I want your funding. I want your budget. But is it the best practice, and is it the best for you? I cover these guys, so I'm not trash talking. I'm just kind of offering some guidance on what I've seen, where it's going, and what you might be looking at as far as things are going. So the first thing I want to hit, I'm not going to get too technical, but I want to make sure that I explain a couple of things so that we understand a lot of the concepts that I'll be talking about. Is everyone familiar with the OSI model? We know layer 1, we know layer 7. We know what happens where IPs are assigned. We know where switches work. We know where applications start and how that traffic is handled. One thing that we notice, F5 as a zero cache default deny full proxy, and I'm not selling the product to you today. One thing that we notice is that, and everybody knows, you've got the network guys, you've got the systems guys. And there's not a lot of interaction normally. So there's usually a disconnect between layers 4 and layer 5. And that's where you see a lot of this segregation. Where F5 lives in all of this environment is we are every layer, except for maybe layer 1. We can be a switch. We can be a router. We handle proxying your applications. We handle the SSL and TLS. We handle the application acceleration and functionality and offer best practice scenarios to optimize those programs. So there's usually a disconnect between I am so-and-so going to deploy this new DISA-DEC, and I am focusing on layer 3, maybe some layer 4 traffic. I have some network firewalls. I have some IDS IPS that focuses on a negative security model versus a positive security model. But what happens to the rest of those applications? I don't care. I have had customers in my time at F5 tell me that they are the service provider. They do not care what happens above layer 4. So when they put in an SSL visibility appliance that is breaking the SSL traffic so they can evaluate what's traversing the network, since they don't care about anything over layer 4, now anything behind that deck can no longer CAC authenticate. It's unencrypted, sure, you've got a great ability to see everything that's processing, but now you've broken Kerberos authentication, you've broken CAC authentication, you've broken several other pieces of that topology. So how do you handle that? And the response has been, we don't care. Does anybody work for Spaywar? I mean, that's who told me that. They also had a very odd policy that I wasn't comfortable with, breaking the SSL outbound traffic for every URL category. So for a lot of us within the DoD, we're focusing on SSL visibility, looking at where users are going, categorizing the websites, doing malware and content inspections and things like that. When I work for an organization, yes, I sign my consent to monitoring banner. That doesn't mean that you should be looking at my bank account. Yeah, I'm not supposed to be going to some sites. You can block my WikiLeaks, whatever. Don't be looking at my bank account. Don't look at if I'm logging into Veeler and I want to pull up my medical records or get a referral to go to the doctor, that's not something that I want logged in your database somewhere. That's HIPAA compliance. That's outside of my consent to monitoring. That's PCI, that's HIPAA, that's several other compliances that you're not qualified for, that I'm not allowing you access to. I didn't grant that, but those organizations are looking at it. So you can do it, just doesn't mean that you should. So the next thing I want to touch on is how things were and how they are now. So in current topologies in pretty much everywhere, not just the DoD, you have a standard proxy or a firewall that basically says, I have traffic, and if I'm talking too loud, I'm just trying to be heard, so yell at me if I'm too loud or too quiet. I have traffic that's coming into my network. I'm publishing SharePoint, I'm publishing Exchange, I'm publishing Cognos or Tismus or whatever. I need the firewall team to open up these ports and protocols for this application to access this system. What sort of insight do I have? It's passing through my firewall. It's going to hit signatures for network type attacks, layer 3, layer 4 type attacks, maybe some layer 2 MAC type attacks. But really, I opened up a hole in my firewall that allows all of this external traffic directly to this system. A lot of firewalls today offer some sort of SSL offloading or SSL bridging, but they don't have the scale and the scope to handle TLS 1.2, TLS 1.3, have FIPS compliant, be able to handle 20,000 plus concurrent users and those sorts of things. So in this scenario, a lot of times what we see is somebody will throw in a load balancer. For those that are familiar with F5, we started as a load balancer. But what we found is a device that's built for enterprise scale, as a device that's built to handle 24 million plus connections, as a device that has a 1 terabyte backplane of traffic that we can process at any given second. We found that a lot of the systems that we were providing availability and scale to would fall down even when we're providing this level of throughput. So an example was an anonymous DDoS attack on JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America about 2.5 years ago. What they did is they found that, I won't say the vendor, but their firewalls that they were using kept falling down. They kept coring, they couldn't keep them online. To an organization like Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, that's millions and millions of dollars a minute that they are losing because their systems are offline. To us, in the DoD, that's possible lives lost if this stuff is in theater. If somebody's trying to access logistics information, if I'm trying to order parts for a vehicle, if I'm trying to access any of these scenarios, to us it's a little bit more significant because it's life or death. We might not care that we lost $36 million today. We care that 4,000 soldiers were at risk because we couldn't communicate and get that information transferred where it needed to be. Where we're moving and where we're evolving to in the industry, and this is not just an F5 solution, is the full proxy architecture. So I mentioned previously that F5 is a zero cache default deny full proxy. What that means is that on the F5 there are 2 stacks. I have a client-side stack and I have a server-side stack. Essentially, the client traffic never reaches my servers. It is terminated at that device, regardless of who the vendor is. We will perform the SSL authentication, the mutual PKI if required. We will perform any security, DDoS protection, web application firewalling, SQL injection, whatever. We will then translate any of that as needed for the application on the server side. Where this is critical is things like CAC authentication or applications that we want to have all users come into a single namespace in the organization. I hit portal.army.mil. That's it. I go to this one website and it has my enterprise email, it has my VLAR, it has my whatever, and all of those systems can be interconnected now with SSO through DMDC, and I'll talk about that a little bit as we get further. But this gives you a lot more power. You're not opening a hole from the public side of your network to the private side of your network. It's not a ports and protocols thing. You can individually control the traffic that comes in, you can evaluate the traffic that comes in, and then you can reinitiate a new session from the device to your applications and translate as needed in any way, shape, or form. So is everybody familiar with Army Network Campaign Plan? Has anybody read it, spent the time to figure out what all of it means? The reason I throw this up here is this is all the stuff we're going to go through. And I'm just joking. We're not going to go through this. I've translated all of these for you to basically be... Here we go. It's network modernization, more or less. There's 5 task orders that we need to look at as we move towards 2017, 2018, 2020 as some of the goals defined. But what I've found in a lot of the conversations that we've had, not just in Army, but in other portions of the DoD that mimic the terminology that's used, is sometimes we make things up. It's a new term for something old. All of a sudden, everybody started calling everything cloud. We've all been using Gmail for 12, 13, 14 years. We've been using Excite and Yahoo and Google. We've been using applications that are hosted somewhere else. But now it's the cloud. And it has evolved as a technology. It's just a new word for the same things. I got real confused when everybody started calling everything fabric, or planes. I've got the data plane. I've got the management plane. We've got the network fabric. We've got the fiber. And I'm running this or this. And there's just so many different words. They all mean the same thing. And what I'm finding is people know what the hell's going on. I'm General so-and-so, and I give you this list, and that's nothing against General Farrell or any of the team. They're very intelligent guys. But let's take the first one. Single security architecture. Can anybody explain this one to me? Does anybody have an easy definition off the top of your head of what the hell they're talking about when they have paragraphs and pages of single security architecture? Exactly. So what this means, and I've tried very hard to translate this very simply from what they put in there, is having a standard architecture. Having devices that work together, that we mirror across the DoD, that we mirror across the Army networks. We've got TLA stacks, we've got JRSS, we've got Disadex. How do you get your internet from here? What services do you get from there? How does this device interconnect with this? I've got Global Fabric, I've got Global SharePoint, I've got all these different programs, and all of them are different topologies. They're different stacks with different skill sets and different requirements. So what we want to move forward towards is the single security architecture, which just means let's standardize the equipment that we use so we can standardize the skill sets and standardize the ways that we are able to deploy these systems, not just in garrison, but in theater as well. It's very difficult when we have technologies that are evolving at an extremely fast pace. We've got VDI, which out of nowhere is now taking over everything. Virtualization was kind of slow to come forward, but then VMware came out and kind of just demolished how we did virtualization of servers. Citrix has been around for years and years with presentation server. I remember when I was getting out of the Marine Corps that we had some presentation servers somewhere that allowed you to do certain things. And I worked several contracts where there was Citrix presentation and they focused on the application virtualization and the virtualized desktop. But now we're consolidating everything. We're consolidating network hardware. We're cloud sourcing. We're consolidating the servers. We're consolidating the desktops. We're figuring out ways to collapse everything into a very small footprint to deliver all this content. So it makes it very difficult. And one of the things that I really wanted to focus on is if you have any of these initiatives going on, do not hesitate to reach out to the vendors. Whether it's us at F5 or VMware or Microsoft, that's our job as the field team, to work with you, to tell you, hey, this is what we're doing. We are working with Microsoft on some brand new technology. We're working with VMware that we have these projects under development that will be coming out in the next year or two. And we can talk to you about roadmap. Otherwise, you end up spending $40 million on a stack that has 16 racks that takes 5 years to deploy 2 racks, and one is barely passing traffic. That's not pointing fingers at anybody. It just makes it complex to deploy these types of scenarios. Enhanced cyber is a big one as well. We're all very familiar with IDS and IPS, I hope. Everybody knows network firewalls. Is everybody familiar with firewalls that function on layers 5 through 7? So layer 5 through 7, standard DDoS attacks are going to happen at the network layer. I'm going to send a ping of death to your servers. I mean, there's more advanced attacks than that. It's just the easiest reference. But I'm going to try to bring your systems down. What about insiders that are running SQL injection queries, cross-site scripts, that are putting macros in Word documents and uploading them to SharePoint? What protects you against those sorts of threats in your environment? What protects you against geofencing? An example of enhanced cyber for the Marine Corps, their PAO site, marines.mil for recruiting and public affairs, they were having 375,000 hack attempts a day. Not just DDoS attacks, but attacks at trying to penetrate the system to gain information. Now, the PAO site didn't have any classified information to gain, but the people that were attacking did not know that. So they had some of our equipment, and all we did is add geofencing. If a DNS request comes in from Beijing or Moscow or wherever, drop it. Do not waste overhead. Do not reject. Do not respond. Just drop this attack. If they couldn't resolve this, if they couldn't DDoS or DNS, they couldn't find us to attack us. Now, that didn't stop people that may have had a database of IPs to attack. That here's a list of IPs that belong to the U.S. government. That list exists. In our database at F5, when people are downloading our equipment, a lot of times you'll show up as a private IP, and we have to go through a trade compliance because within our organization, we're fully compliant with trade regulations. We do not allow certain countries to download any F5 software or documentation or anything. We block specific ciphers that belong to, say, North Korea. We block ciphers that belong to China. We have had requests from the NSA to add those in so they could use our product as a sniffing device, but it's something we are very focused on in maintaining trade compliance. Strengthen network operations. This is a big deal. One thing that I'm finding is a lot of organizations are focused on educating their individuals on very standard hardware. You might have a Microsoft certification. You might have a Cisco certification. Do you have any other certifications that apply to the industry? There are some organizations, you might have a CISSP. You might have a certified ethical hacker. As far as network operations are concerned, do you know how to manage the blue coats on your network? Do you know how to manage the F5s? Do you know how to manage any of the firewalls, the source fires, the FireEyes, any of that equipment? So this is one thing that at F5 we're trying to help focus on with the Army. It's one of my initiatives that I offer a free boot camp. So if there's anybody in the Army that's interested in F5 as a product, as a certification, I will show up to your command and give you a free boot camp for a day to help you get certified on the product. In the end, it helps me. The more that I help strengthen the network operations teams within the Army, within the DoD, the easier my job is. And I'm super lazy. I don't like to, I go to my office in my underwear. Come on. I don't want to get up and go at places and travel. Increased throughput, services to the edge. What does this mean to everyone? Normally when I ask that question, it's WAN optimization. I'm going to put an accelerator on this point. I'm going to put an accelerator in theater. This is going to accelerate my traffic over the satellites. I am done. I am good. How many WAN optimization companies exist today? There's one left, and they're here. And they're good at what they do. But what we found is as technology has increased, as bandwidth has increased, we don't need it as much. As the protocols have developed, as HTTP2 has been developed and things like that, we don't need to do as much as we used to because it's built into the protocol. That doesn't mean don't go get a riverbed. That just means that when you're looking at increasing throughput, the WAN is only one piece. That's layer 1 through 4. Again, who's thinking about layers 5 through 7? If I access, for example, a SharePoint site, I know that somebody, a site collection administrator, took a picture with their brand new 8 billion megapixel Nikon of their general, and they put it on their SharePoint page, and it's a 800 meg image, but they shrunk it down to 640 by 480. That's still an 800 meg image. That page is going to load as slow as it takes that user to download that image. What things that do that accelerate layers 5 through 7 are they optimize dynamically based on the devices that are accessing, based on the resolution, based on the bandwidth that that user has. So if I'm connecting over line of sight UHF, I've got 56K max on an iPad or on a compact device that I'm PMing a vehicle and it's taken forever for an image to download. That's wasted time. There are ways that you can accelerate 5 through 7. There's image conversion. There's devices that can do that for you to help accelerate more than just the actual network layers, more than just the satellite communications. Those devices are focusing on TCP deduplication and compression and things like that, and they're building a deduplication table on either side. That's not compressing the actual image. It's just making that large image move a little bit faster. DR Coop is also a big concern. Yeah. Absolutely. So actually, one organization of TradeTalk is one of my favorite customers. Rich Noe, Jeremy Blau out of Fort Eustis. They are ATSC. Yeah. I love Rich and his team. We work with them quite frequently. They are, as I get to some of the other topics, hopefully I'm not taking too long. Rich is like one of our showcases as far as SSO for Army. Rich has was one of the first ones to adopt SSO with DMVC, which is Deers. They're doing all the cat authentication of the F5. They're tying it into the SharePoint. They're pulling attributes back from DMVC that they tie into the Blackboard applications, pulls back the data rank and points and all those sorts of things. And it's all done through F5. We work with those quite frequently. We're trying to get more involved with TradeTalk here to get more involved in some of those things. But we can always talk offline as well. And I'll make sure I leave some of my cards if you're interested. And if I'm trying not to be too technical, but if you do have technical questions, I'll be over in the booth this week, so come find me, grab me today. We're available to talk whenever you guys want. DR Coop is a funny one. Since we're talking about TradeTalk, the Eustis Net, does anybody know where the Eustis Net's Coop failover is? Does everybody know where Eustis is? So Newport News, their failover is Fort Lee. which is how many miles from Newport News? 40 maybe? I think the requirement says it must be 20 miles. If I have a hurricane come through Norfolk, I've just screwed both of my data centers. Does anybody know where Failover's data centers are? New Orleans and San Diego? Well, Charleston, yeah, that one's kind of non-existent. I spent a lot of time there, but if I'm going to pick a location for a data center, yeah, sure, it's cheap. But New Orleans, it's on the water. There's windows in the data center. You can see the water. And then San Diego. So I've got hurricane, flood capital of the planet, earthquake capital of the planet. Two great places to have a data center. Nothing against that, but when we're thinking about DR Coop scenarios within the DoD, let's think about it a little bit more. If I'm looking at where's Netcom trying to coop? Fort Parson. Okay, that makes sense. If you look at military health, they've got data centers in Aurora. They've got data centers in San Antonio. Those are two decent locations, significantly separated. We have the capability to have significant throughput through those places for replication, to run active data centers, to do failover, and those are all things that we help with as well. Certain scenarios can be considered as well, like when you're looking at DR Coop, do you want to run active data centers? Do you want to do geofencing for your users? Do you want users in Afghanistan to go to a data center that might be closer? Do you want them to go to Guam? Do you want them to go to California? Do you want them to go to the East Coast? You can do that with geofencing. I can say, hey, this application is functioning faster over here right now. Let's send users here. I can say, hey, this application is down at this data center. We're going to send all users here. It gives you a lot more intelligence than our data center just died. We have to call somebody. They have to make a DNS change. We have to wait 4 hours for that to hopefully resolve to this location. My phone's blowing up, things like that. You can automate all of this. Not just through us, but there's other vendors that can provide an intelligent disaster recovery plan. Where all you have to do is ask us, hey, I want to run active. I want to run active standby data centers. My application goes down here, I want users to go here. We can help them. But people are just saying, all right, they say we gotta have a coop, let's put it 20 miles down the road. I mean, even Richmond would be better than Lee for Eustis guys. And that's not picking on them, it's just what they had available. But there's things that are just kind of silly. ADCCP. Is anybody paying attention to anything that's going on with the cloud consolidation programs? Anybody interested in cloud? There are so many different things going on with cloud right now. We're fully involved, fully dedicated with FedRAMP. We're fully dedicated to helping CSPs get their compliances. We are trying to make sure that things go well. Where we are getting a lot of pushback is currently it sucks. If you go to AWS, you're going to get charged a ton of money. If you go to EC2, still kind of AWS, they pass off all ITAR compliance. So they basically say, it's up to each vendor to make sure that you meet all trade regulations. We can't say for sure that your application may run in China or not. We're going to make sure that F5 or Microsoft fills out that ITAR compliance, and we're kind of washing our hands of it. And you've got MilCloud and GovCloud and all these different options, and they've all got bonuses. Some of them have more negatives than they have bonuses. This is not really solid yet. Everybody's working on it. I've worked with the EIS guys on several occasions to look at the different scenarios that they want to evaluate. We've talked to the different guys that are involved with the CCP on how they think they want it to go. I want to have all this hardware. I want to make this happen. That's not saying it's not going to happen. It's just very slow to gain speed. We've seen different issues with each possibility that we could absolutely take offline. One of the big things that came out of a lot of the... we actually were at the Aon show in Belvoir a couple months ago and listened to General Farrell speak about a lot of these items. One of the important ones to us was reference architectures. And this also gets back to, do not design your architectures in a bubble, in a vacuum. Please reach out to the vendors. Talk to me, talk to Cisco, talk to Microsoft. Figure out our roadmap. If you're building best practice reference architectures for the DoD and not speaking to the vendors, you don't know our roadmap. We don't post our roadmaps up on public websites. That's proprietary information that has dates and times associated to it. That's a Sarbanes-Oxley violation for any publicly traded company. We can't post that publicly. We can come and talk face-to-face about it. We can tell you what's coming. We can give you timelines. We just can't share it with the planet. So if reference architectures are being built, even if I'm not in it, reach out to the people that are. Now, we are part of several of these. The GMN guys are responsible for several reference architectures. The guys out at Aberdeen at the ATEC and ATC are part of several of these. We are part of the SSO reference architecture pretty heavily. We are the core of DISA AGS, which is dead now. I guess they couldn't get enough customers. They shut it down on the 30th. So like 3 days ago was the last day, 4 days ago. You've got the IDMI feed from Netcom. You've got the DMDC, which is DEERS. It's a DS logon service. It's SAML. For anybody that's not familiar with SAML, it's an XML-based federation authentication protocol that we process inherently. There's several different reference architectures that we're part of, but again, if you're responsible for any of this and you haven't spoken to a vendor about it, it's being designed in a vacuum. So is everybody familiar with JRSS and JIE? I'm going to make several jokes about these guys. If you work on any of those solutions, I apologize. I helped these guys after they designed it in a vacuum. Ari's gone, but his team's still there. So if anybody knows those guys, Terry and Joe and all of that team that architected this solution, this now is owned by DISA. It was predominantly funded and driven by Army. I had a lot of interesting conversations and fun helping fix a lot of the issues that were put into this. We eventually found that certain products weren't compliant. Certain hardware didn't speak to each other. Certain interfaces weren't built to communicate with other types of interfaces. If I have a 10 gig or a 40 gig interface on one device, but I'm running it through another device that doesn't support that, or it supports it in a port channel or some other weird configuration, if I didn't talk to the vendor, I might not know that. If I didn't read every single line of a deployment guide or a data sheet, there's information that I'm missing. Now, there's lots of plans with these guys as far as where they're going to be, when they're going to deploy, how it's going to be initiated in your environment. Do you guys know how many JRSS stacks are up and running today? There's about 5 that are deployed. I think we're almost at 7. Do you know how many are passing traffic? 2. Do you know how many people are happy with it? None. Now, also, they're looking at rolling in additional functionality. They're looking at rolling in the TLA functions. So all of the guys that used to be at 2RCC out in Huachuca are now JRSS employees. They are now focused on rolling the Blue Coat functionality into the JRSS stacks and restructuring how the JRSS stack looks and putting F5s at the bottom of the stack for the base, what would be the TLA functions, into the F5s. I would love for that to happen, but we are also still functioning on TLA stacks. The plan for this is to have these deployed eventually by 2020, maybe, but we've got 2 stacks processing traffic right now. I think it's San Antonio, and I can't remember the other one. But as JRSS was taken away from Army and given to DISA, I've kind of been pulled out of a lot of those conversations. But you can go out and you can pull down these JRSS decks and look at the architecture and the topology of how traffic flows up and how traffic flows back for intrabase and interbase and what products are in that stack and how they communicate and how it actually affects you and how things are going to roll in. We're actually trying to work with 2RCC and Netcom Forward or 4RCC, whatever they want to call themselves today, on ways that we can do the same thing as we can modernize that technology with hardware that a lot of people aren't happy with and provide additional functionality that when JRSS finally comes around, you can probably just say, no, we've got this. We don't need to handle it. And this isn't to throw in doubt. It's just to throw in, it's a mess. Everywhere is a mess. So if you're looking at things and you think that something you're working on, one of your initiatives might be a mess, it's the same everywhere. This stuff is still going on. You guys know how much involvement Air Force has with JRSS? They threw their hands up and walked away. They're now designing their own JRSS stack. Does everybody know how much Navy and Marine Corps is involved with JRSS? None. They walked away. So Air Force was responsible for, they're supposed to be responsible for the management of the stacks. They're supposed to have all the tools to do the maintenance and the updates and some of that stuff. They just said, no, we're done. We don't care. We're done with this. So basically, we have JRSS stacks that are funded by the Army for like the past 2-3 years, $40+ million out of your money that's now over at DISA that you'll never see again, that you could have been refreshing your hardware, updating things, modernizing, taking care of business. Latency issues, functionality issues, and we're figuring it out. But what happened was, it gets back to the topic of, it was designed in a vacuum. You know, Hari didn't say, all right, I've got 4 million users. I want to be able to provide throughput for 4 million users for enterprise email, for debts, for whatever. I want to do CAC authentication. I want to do this. We're going to throw all these hardware in it. He just said, best of breed, here's money, get best of breed. So now as we go through and we look at how many users are on a base, when you look at failover, if I need to failover capacity and support that same capacity for 2 facilities in 1 stack, I don't have the throughput. I don't have the capability. They took the best of breed. So if you're not familiar with like F5 hardware, one of our appliances, like the Facebook level hardware, is a 16U device that has blades that go into it. They bought this 16U device and they put 1 blade in it. So this device that can handle 24 million concurrent users and a terabyte a second can right now only handle like 10,000. And that's the hardware that's in place. And we can update the hardware, but with the money that DISA was given, they never even purchased the support contracts. So all of the hardware that Army bought and was deploying and working to get put in place, DISA never even bought support contracts. And as they're deploying these stacks, it's fixed now, but as they've been deploying the stacks, we would get phone calls. You cannot deploy our devices without an active support contract because you can't activate it. You put for our device, you put the license on, it reaches out to our servers, or you do a CCM process, you get a validation, boom, Bob's your uncle, you're done. But in this scenario, they had purchased brand new hardware and let it sit for so long that the support contracts ended. And it took them an additional year to purchase any of those support contracts, and we basically had to give it to them for free, just so they could deploy those stacks. It was a massive nightmare for Oklahoma, or Kansas City, and Wiesbaden. I worked with the team that deployed it. It was SMS that was on site to deploy those systems. I worked with those guys very closely to make sure that they were certified, that they understood the F5s, because their higher-ups only gave them a script and said, here's some hardware that you don't understand. Run this script when you get to the site, and it will configure everything for you. You're done. Life doesn't work like that. It was a nightmare. These scripts turned interfaces off, turned interfaces on. They didn't have the licenses. We finally got it sorted, but that's what's been going on with it. So that's one of the reasons that people aren't happy. Also, if I'm giving you $25 million a year to provide me services, and I don't have any services, I'm going to be pretty pissed off at you. I mean, that's just, some of the issues with it. I'm not trying to pin it on DISA. Everybody has their jokes about DISA. I actually am happy that we have DISA for one specific reason. In F5, I cover pretty much all of Fed. I'm tied to Army right now. But when I work with the civilian organizations and NSA and stuff like that, as far as PKI is concerned, smart cards and their PIVs and how their CAs are structured as far as PKI, it is a nightmare. It's the wild, wild west. They do not have a standard structure for how certificates and the attributes are used. For us in the DoD, since CAC cards have existed for me, it's been EDI-PI at mil. If I authenticate to anything within the DoD, my EDI-PI at mil is in Active Directory. It's in enterprise email. It's everywhere I go with my CAC card across the DoD. So I'm happy with DISA for that. I just think that there's been so much turnover with JRSS. It was Hari's baby. Hari's gone. his deputy, I don't remember his name, Manish or something, was supposed to move up. That didn't happen. So this dream is kind of dead. It's been handed off to Eli Konikoff and some other guys. There's Colonel Gus, Santiago, that was out of Huachuca. It was kind of his baby to push some things through. There's just no sort of guidance right now.
So when you listen to Halverson, DOD,
Yeah. Yeah. I see it being pushed until it fails, and I hope it doesn't. I mean, I've had a hand in helping the guys get this up and running, but I don't see it coming out next year. I don't see it coming out in 2018. This is more like this needs to be re-architected. And we put two whole F5 engineers to help the DISA team re-architect all of JRSS. So we have to re-architect all of not just ours, we're helping with the rest of the hardware and tying that together as well. This solution is being re-architected. This, as it exists today, is not going to survive. It's going to evolve into something else. But, if we're concerned about the Army Network campaign plan and how we get to 2020, like JRSS isn't probably going to happen for most of us until 2020 because it has to be fixed. And I've got several customers that have something that I went to my general and I said, hey, general, I need funding to do this project. This will fix everything. You'll be happy. And I'm a year down the line and it's not working. But I can't go to you and say, I'm scared to death. I'm sorry, sir, this doesn't work. I need to re-architect this. So we're seeing it quite a bit. And as the vendor, we're trying to help customers. It's just like, hey, man, say this broke. Technology evolved. We have a better way. We can fix this. We just need to do it this way. That's kind of where we're at. Nobody wants to say, this is a cluster. We need to fix this. We are doing it on the backside. We're helping those guys re-architect. We're helping them pick the right hardware because the hardware is not built to scale. The hardware is not compliant. The hardware does not interface. Not just us, but the other pieces in the stack as well. So we're helping tie all of that together. So I'm not trying to point any fingers. It's just, this is Hari's baby. Hari's gone. He had the vision, and he kind of said, hey, make this work. But nobody else has that same vision that he had, if that makes sense. He had kind of a plan, but not like a, yeah. So hopefully I'm running kind of low on time. At F5, we focus pretty heavily on compliance. I am the point of contact at F5 that handles the APL, CSFC, common criteria, NIAP, NIST, blah, 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 whatever. I write the deployment guides to meet those compliances. I work with the UCCO FSO to write the STIGs and SRGs to make this stuff happen. We are highly dedicated to this. This is something that we are very focused on to make sure that what we provide you is a fully compliant solution. One of the points that I have in some of this, and I'll just kind of skip through some of this, we have all of this. If you have any problems, I know a lot of people have come through CCRI with a lot of questions over the past several months. If you have questions on any of this, find me. Find Michael Slavinsky, who's the Army West engineer standing in the back over here. We can help educate you on any of this that you have questions on. I really wanted to talk about SSO a little bit. Does everybody know what happened to DISA AGS I mentioned earlier? They shut down. AKO, there was a memo that went out last summer that AKO was shutting down SSO. Then they changed their mind at the last minute, and they're like, oh, we're going to maintain the legacy namespace, us@army.mil. Pretty much everybody is a so-and-so at army.mil now, or at mail.mil now. So there's probably not that many legacy applications that you need. They're still providing LDAP. You should probably be off doing LDAP across unsecured or commercial links to AKO. We are part of this architecture, and we work with those guys quite frequently, so that's nothing against them. But there's better ways to look at doing SSO in all of DoD. An example is what we have set up with Aberdeen. The Aberdeen guys at the test center have federation set up through multiple branches of DoD. So they've got some SharePoint and project servers that are up and running that they have Marines down on Quantico able to access. They can basically open that up to everyone, but we have it set up just for the Marines right now. And we're tying together their local Active Directory. We're tying together their link to the Netcom IDMI feed. We're tying that together with the DMDC DEERS services to pull back additional attributes. This AGS is dead. And we're doing it all with Federation. I mentioned this a little bit before. If you guys have any interest in talking Federation at all, feel free to come and find us. We do all of this inherently. We were the core of this at AGS. They just couldn't get enough customers that were willing to pay the exorbitant fees to get that service up and running. But we're the core of the ATEC solution. We do all of this stuff for the Eustis guys, ATSC in Fort Eustis. One of the big things that's come up in the past couple months, so DoDI 8520.03. This is a reiteration of OMB 1111. If you don't know what that is, it is basically the requirement to CAC enable all devices on the DoD network. Not just the apps, but the management interfaces of those devices. Storage, switches, routers, management tools, whatever, to CAC enable those interfaces. We can help you with that. We've got proven solutions. We are doing this for state. We are doing this for different groups in NetCom. We're doing this all over. Fully FIPS compliant. On the APL, we can help you achieve that pretty quickly. If you have F5s, we can tell you how to do it today. So it looks like it's time for everybody to go to lunch. One of the topics was SSL break and inspect. All I'll tell you here, we can do all your forward proxy stuff, all your reverse proxy stuff. We're agnostic to the other products that you want to put in line. We have more scale than pretty much anybody on a FIPS device to break the SSL, to recreate temporal client certificates for outbound traffic scenarios. We own the patent on it, so other guys might have a solution, but they'll probably be getting sued for it pretty shortly. We do this for NSA. We do this all over the place. If you have questions on how do I apply URL categorization, malware inspection, content filtering for outbound traffic for users, how do I see what's going on in those environments, as well as the inbound traffic. Inbound's easy. Everybody can do inbound. Blue Coats do it. We do it. It's pretty simple to do, but can everybody do it in PFS, perfect forward secrecy? Can they support the ephemeral Diffie-Hellman elliptical curve cipher suites? Can they do it at the speed and capacity that we can? So if this is something you have any concern about, any questions about, find us. I don't have any more time to talk to you guys about additional content, but again, we've got a booth over in the 800 row. Feel free to come find us. Ask us any questions you might have. We're as ready to get into the weeds as you guys are. So thanks for your time.